What's up, everybody? My name is T. Welcome to Second Printing, where we give new life to comics and graphic novels that deserve another look, from iconic stories to hidden gems. Some you might already know, hopefully some that you don't, but we want to dive into the world of comics where every story is worth revisiting. So without further ado, I want to get started with Static Season 1. Let's get into it. Virgil knows that his parents wouldn't want him at this march. Tensions are high, the police are unpredictable, but Frank, this guy from his school, and some jerks threaten to jump him. So he, like many of us reasonably would, seizes the opportunity to head to the protest, half to avoid getting beaten up and half because Frida asked him to. Also, Virgil is black and does agree that his life matters, so there is that too. But here we actually meet Frank, and Frank is a dick. Like, holy shit, Frank is a dick. First, he calls Virgil an Oreo, which is offensive enough on its own. But then, when Frida is trying to defend Virgil, he just says, "Quiet, slut." So Virgil immediately rocks his shit, right? My goat is in early form. It's great. But he sets off this huge brawl, and then someone calls the police to report a riot. And instantly, when I was reading this the first time, my heart's just already in my throat. I know where this is going, but like, the tension, it's palpable. It's good. But then we see soldiers, some cops in riot gear, I guess they're supposed to be, but they're rocking up with APCs, gas grenades, automatic weapons. They're just trying to get the situation under control. But things start happening pretty fast now. Cops are yelling, protesters yelling. It's about to get ugly, but no one there has any idea just how ugly for real. But then, the cops say, "Fine then, let them fly," and just open fire on the crowd. But they aren't shooting bullets, they're firing like canisters of some new tear gas from Alva Industries. Big pharma, big justice working together. What can go wrong, right? Everything. Everything goes wrong. The gas is everywhere. It's blinding everyone. People are screaming, they're collapsing, and they're changing. Kids' faces are melting off right now, okay? It's horrifying. But then, in this like really disgusting and chilling exchange, one officer is trying to suggest, they need to call ambulances as he's just looking in disbelief. And he gets told, "Don't get soft. They asked for it." So we and Virgil, we come to some time has passed, and Virgil's whole family's around him, and they're just talking about why he was even at the protest at all. And I really just got to take a second to highlight Virgil's family. I love them. Okay, they offer just such a grounding presence to the story. And like, really, how often do we get functional two-parent households, not just in black stories, but in comic books in general? Everyone's parents are dead. And then Sharon is just an absolute gem. I low key wish my actual sisters were a little bit more like Sharon. But she's clearly very protective of Virgil, in her own way. She's keeping tabs on him without even being at the same school as him. And then she's the one who tells their parents that he was most likely at the protest, trying to avoid some bullies, not running behind some girl. But ironically, it was kind of both. And Sharon actually knows that too. So Virgil just pleads for her to stop telling his business as he wakes up, and who with a sister hasn't? So then his dad says that they're going to, restart his training, which is a classic dad reaction, and it just makes my heart sing. And we slide into, this little power montage for Virgil. He's learning, he blows out the power on the toilet, and he's learning to try to control a little bit better. But it's been 2 weeks, and he's about ready to go back to school, sort of. He really doesn't know exactly what to do, but he doesn't want to keep sitting at home with this like buzzing feeling he has. And of course, he instantly runs into Frank, who's calling himself Hot Streak now, like a total dweeb. And Frank is harassing some poor girl, showing off and threatening her or whatever, until he notices Virgil and tries to some kindergarten level insults about Virgil's mom sending him back to school and then asking if Virgil's got any rhythm. And then Virgil just dismisses all of it with, "You gave yourself a nickname? Weak." Then he leaps into the air and just unloads on Hot Streak and just fries him in front of everybody. He's telling Frank how sick of him everyone is, and people around him are begging him to stop, and they're begging for him to keep going or cheering for him to keep going. And like, Frank is a dick, sure, but obviously Virgil isn't going to kill him. So he stops attacking, But then when a school security guard rolls up asking what happened, everybody says Virgil didn't do anything and Frank just slipped, including Frank. So from here, we pick back up a few days later. Virgil's meditating, practicing to control his powers again. It's early, it's before school. And he's just reflecting on the last few weeks, his fight with Hot Streak, and the Big Bang. Because Virgil, he's confused right now, and it's coming out a lot as anger. Like a month ago, he's saying all he had to worry about was his crush on Frida, maintaining his grades. But, getting gassed by the police tends to have a way of changing things. But then Sharon calls out that Virgil is running a little bit late at this point, so naturally she feels the need to take the opportunity to tease her brother a little bit about how thoughtful she is for making him lunch since he missed breakfast. But unfortunately, Virgil's just elsewhere right now, so he snaps at her. But then when she holds her ground and gives him like a quick little reality check, he apologizes. He thanks her for the food, and then he leaves. And this whole interaction is actually super relatable for me as someone who mostly processes such stressful stuff like internally. Like I'm gonna ask for help when I'm ready, but sometimes I think you just gotta sit in it for a second while you get your thoughts together. And I feel like that's where Virgil is right now. He's trying to process a pretty serious series of events, like and developing superpowers. It's a lot. Give my guy some time. We have the privilege of seeing his thoughts as he's processing them. But to the people around him, all they know is that he was victimized by the police and then he has either been different or unconscious since then. But it's pretty understandable that Richie and Frida would be concerned for their friend and then not correct anybody on what actually happened with Todd Streak when rumors start going around that it was a basketball player named Derek who tussled with Francis and not Virgil. But like I said, Virgil just isn't ready to accept support just yet. He's too afraid of the potential rejection that he would feel if his friends were afraid of him. And he doesn't trust that the people closest to him won't see him any differently after what happened to him, and it terrifies him. Like he literally ducks out of the way of Frida's touch and dips around a corner, and electricity is just crackling around him. You can tell his heart is pounding in his chest. So we transition to dinner with the Hawkins family, and we just get these beautifully contrasted two-page spreads from the main series artist Nick Draper-Ivey that highlight the before the Big Bang and the after. Like on these pages, and even in the previous pages, we can see how lighting is used to emphasize Virgil's feelings. Like Richie and Frida enter frame literally under a spotlight, cutting through the dark that had been hanging around Virgil that morning before he got to school. And then here, the sun is illuminating the whole breakfast table in the before scene. Everyone's laughing, they're teasing each other. It's incredibly wholesome. But then conversely, when we jump to the now, the after of the Big Bang, the whole dinner table is cast in shadow. It's like dimly lit by these overhead lights. And like I'm trying not to lose commentary or whatever, just recapping the page, but the art just speaks for itself so loudly. Like the body language and position of everyone just sets a more tense tone. Hell, Virgil hardly looks up at all. Like it's so clear that he feels isolated by what happened, but consistently the people who care about him have been trying to let him know he's not alone. Like he's not isolated. But that's like what makes this feel so real. It's usually we don't let people help us when we need it the most and we end up prolonging our own suffering. So, maybe don't do that, but, whatever. I'm not here to tell you how to live your life. But anyway, after Sharon insists a little bit, his parents pause to ask Virgil what he needs so they can include him in a plan to support him. But all he can think about is this buzzing and how out of control he feels, how much he wishes he could go back before the Big Bang. And then Hot Streak appears. And now Virgil just needs to get him away from here. And so, look, I'm gonna keep it 1,000 with y'all. I am not trying to reason with the burning lunatic that is screaming my name in my front lawn. Virgil is wild as hell for thinking that talking was on the table. Like, his name is Francis, and there's nothing wrong with that, but clearly he feels the need to compensate. What with the, hot streak name and complete inability to accept an L. But this fight is phenomenal. Like Draper-Ivey's art is just so kinetic and cinematic. The whole sequence just is begging to be animated. Like these boys is boxing, okay? Until Virgil counters a big whiff from Hot Streak by kicking him in the fucking neck. So then Hot Streak blasts him back with his huge fireball. And then as this is happening, Virgil's thinking back to his time with the Inventors of Tomorrow program and this demonstration from Curtis Metcalf, who some of you might know as Hardware. We might cover his books if the interest is there. But he shows Virgil how you can use an electric containment field to smother a chemical fire by ionizing the oxygen in its surroundings. So Virgil charges up and clears the flames before launching himself into a collision with Hotstreak. And I mean, just look at these panels. My goodness. So then Hotstreak gets launched across the ground, and he's used up most of his energy. Virgil's yelling for him to stay down, and then he uses the ionization shield to trap Hotstreak until he burns out, which you would think might also kill him, but comic book logic, we're not worried about it. But anyway, yay! The day is saved. So Sharon runs up to Virgil. He's warning everyone to stay back while the ozone dissipates. When Hotstreak escapes the shield and just sucker punches the shit out of him before declaring, "Think on this the next time you want to mess with me, low voltage." And he sets the Hawkins house on fire. So Virgil and his family are just in disbelief. They are paralyzed by the abject horror of seeing their home like this. Now, for what it's worth, Virgil attempts some, probably empty threats, but Hotstreak just calls his bluff and straight up asks if fighting him is more important than his house burning down. And then he just runs away. But accepting that Frank is not the priority right now, Virgil tries his ionization shield thingy on the entire house containing the flames, and then he launches all the ozone into the sky. And so I'm working on some X-Men videos at the same time I'm doing these. Don't ask me when it's coming out. And I can't help but think of all the implications for Magneto when you apply the same understanding of the relationship between electricity and magnetism. Like, Static can theoretically do everything Magneto can, and like possibly more. Like, let me know down in the comments who you think is stronger, Static or Magneto. But anyway, with the fire out, everyone starts reacting to everything that just happened, and I love the effort from Virgil's father to resist the urge to just start freaking out and demanding explanations. And I say effort because he is still clearly shaken. And when black men are scared, sometimes we become more forceful than we would be normally. But then Jean, Virgil's mom, is also clearly scared. But as a medical professional, she's a little bit more open to like more medical testing to make sure that Virgil's okay. But clearly Robert knows about the Tuskegee experiments though. Google it if you're curious about black distrust of the medical system. But basically, everything that Virgil was afraid of, or still trying to get a handle on, literally just blew up with their windows, thanks to Hotstreak. And if his parents were ready to help him before, now they're only thinking about protecting him, which makes him feel even more out of control and isolated than he already did. So then Virgil retreats to his room, and the sound of his parents arguing is just ringing in the air around him. So the next day, Virgil heads to school early to avoid, everything. His family is too much right now, and he's just trying to get some equilibrium. But then we're introduced to Darius. I'm going to say Darius. And this is a childhood friend of Virgil's who's, grown a little bit more distant from the group that we've seen so far. Apparently, he's not getting invited to game nights anymore since he started focusing on his streaming channel to build a journalism portfolio. But the reason we care about Darius at all right now is because he's been covering the fallout from the Big Bang for weeks. And he wants to give Bang Babies a chance to control the story, tell their side, and if he can get help for anyone who might need it. Right now, though, Virgil is only worried about the target that Darius could be painting on him. And Darius is a little too persistent for his own good, so despite repeated warnings from Virgil, keeps trying to record him. So Virgil fries his phone. And L-O fucking L to that. So at this point, Virgil just skips school entirely and skates around Dakota with his thoughts until he decides to give Curtis Metcalf, aka Hardware, a call. And like Hardware is a whole thing, but for right now, the important part is he's essentially Milestone's "my superpower is I'm smarter than you" character. He was the lead scientist for Alva Industries, so now after the Big Bang, the companies tried to pin the blame on him, and he has to go on the run. But before all of that, he gave Virgil and some other inventors of Tomorrow kids a way to get in touch with him about the program. So when we jump back to the present, Hardware is actually the first person Virgil has voluntarily told about his powers and then asked for help. Like, it takes a second for Virgil to get the words out, but Curtis believes him. Like, he points out that Icon is flying around and that he personally is being framed, so that Virgil doesn't really sound all that crazy, which is a really refreshing change of pace. I hate skepticism from characters in fantastical sci-fi settings. People can have superpowers, but they'll draw the lines at demons or some shit. It makes no sense. Anyway, so Hardware directs Virgil to the storage locker, but then he warns him to be careful because, obviously. And they tease the future team up a little bit, and then Virgil heads to catch a bus to Dakota storage. Now, when Virgil arrives to the lab, it's probably the first time we've actually seen him happy since the story started. Like, as a STEM kid, being around all that delicious, sciencey goodness helps him forget his stress for a second. But then, of course, the police arrive, flagging access to the locker as Curtis Metcalf. And then suddenly, all of that stress just comes rushing back. Alright, so when the story picks back up, Virgil is still trapped. The police are yelling for Hardware to come out, which is obviously not an option. But this is a mobile lab. Virgil was in the middle of excitedly exploring just a few minutes ago. So this is when he gets an idea how to escape. Using one of the environmental suits as a decoy and wearing the other to hide his face, Virgil causes this chemical smokescreen to fill the area, which is only for like 2 seconds until the police open fire anyway, yelling that he's going for a weapon, which he's not, obviously. But in case you forgot, this is effectively protest media. Like, the cop dialogue here is really uncomfortable for me, and assumedly this is on purpose, because there's no nuance to their approach at all. There's no concern for if they've got the right guy, and then it becomes a response to just Virgil trying to run away. And like, I don't hate what Ayala is doing here because it's clearly intentional, but I certainly don't like it. But then, thankfully, as Virgil closes his eyes, expecting to feel the pain of the bullets ripping into him, he just doesn't feel anything. And he's not able to just stop the bullets, but he can control the guns themselves and just launches all of them into the air, which gives him an idea when he lands on a manhole cover as he's running away. A little charge channeling in the cover, and now he's flying. And even Virgil has to admit this superpower stuff may not be all bad. So once Virgil gets home, he notices how much work his dad's already done repairing the house, but he heads to the basement entrance because he's still not ready to face his dad. Like, the call to Hardware was just a baby step toward Virgil getting what he needs to be able to process all the wild and traumatic shit that keeps happening to him. He says, I don't know how to explain what's going on. I can't look my dad in the eye and tell him I didn't trust him enough to tell him about all this. I don't want to see that look that says, I barely know who you are anymore. I can barely recognize myself in the mirror. Our poor boy is hurting bad. But this is still just such a fantastic page. We see Virgil begin to really process and come to terms with his newfound trauma by way of exploring his new powers with an old perspective. And personally, I think they manage a great blend of show and tell here. Like, Draper-Ivey's art conveys Virgil's emotion even without Ayala's dissertation on manifesting and integrating trauma. Like, a key aspect of any traumatic event is that it creates a clear before and after. This change or threat to our personal history is so incongruent with what we believed beforehand that it can just shatter us completely. Healing usually only becomes possible after work, and often a lot of it, to rebuild like a new self that's better aligned with the new world our traumas introduced us to. So for Virgil, now he's getting to do science stuff, tinkering with liquid metals and the incredible fabric materials from the lab. It reminds him how he used to want to be a superhero, helping people with cool powers and a cool costume. He's always known there wasn't anyone coming to save his neighborhood, but then, he hits the sewing machine, and maybe somebody can be coming now. And as he thinks back on how it was always cheaper for him and his friends to make their costumes, we get a beautiful suit up scene. Virgil remembers how much he enjoyed learning how to sew from Sharon and just lets everything melt away into the machine. Like, he's actually having fun. And for the first time, the tone of the comic starts to shift some. when Sharon catches him checking himself out in the mirror, like fully suited up for the first time. And the suit is awesome. It's a great callback to the very first costume Static wore back in '93. And I think it's a beautiful and subtle visual metaphor for being able to appreciate the familiarity in something new, as now Virgil's looking into the mirror at his reflection. Now, I have to ruin all those warm and fuzzies that you should be feeling right now because we have to talk about the art. And no, not Nikolas Draper-Ivey's stellar work that I'm going to keep glazing for this entire series. No, because for the last 10 pages of this issue, we change artists. And I fucking hate it. And this is no shade to Crisscross, but legitimately, I am here for Draper-Ivey. And like, it's even worse because in my head, like, I want to put the book down after we tie up Virgil's emotional recovery arc. Like, it feels really good there. But they put like the meat of Virgil's healing and reconciliations into these last pages, so that way we can then like move cleanly into the back half of season 1. I get it. It's just so ugly. Like, this is important stuff, and where Draper-Ivey's style lends itself to like the really emotionally heavy moments, serious beats, great emphasis on character expression. Like, the switch to Crisscross is just so jarring. It takes me out of the scene. Like, the urge to just skip all of this and start issue 4 is just super strong. But Virgil has a great talk with his dad, where he asks him if he ever wished that Virgil took more after him. And then, like a great fucking dad, Robert assures his son that he does take after his father, they just manifest it differently. He tells Virgil that while he can't fully comprehend what Virgil's going through, as his father, if he could keep him safe from all of this, he would do it instantly. But we all know that's not what growing up is about, and so Virgil lets him know that he's glad to know that his dad has his back no matter what. And then after all the smiles and hugs, Virgil heads back to school the next day, and he's feeling much, much better about just everything. Like, while he's walking in, he mentions how he didn't even realize how heavy the thought of his friends not trusting him was weighing on him. But while Virgil's thinking about whether he'll get in any trouble for being late, Darius comes out of nowhere and pulls Virgil into the bathroom. And so the last time we saw Darius, he was back at the house where he interviewed those bang babies the first time. But this time, one of them is missing, and the one left is dramatically freaked out because apparently they had gone to some bang baby rally led by Killmonger, but on fire, and had been ambushed by army guys. And like, I'm making jokes, but the reveal of this guy is incredible. The artwork really sells Holocaust as this awe-inspiring badass. Blood Syndicate will probably be the next Milestone series we cover after Static, just off the strength. But anyway, as everyone's scrambling and getting overwhelmed, apparently Hotstreak made himself enough of a problem that he gave time for our devilish friend here to get away. And then back in the present, the reason Darius pulled Virgil into the bathroom and is refusing to let him go to class is because of those same army guys, dressed like men in black this time, are at the school now. And we see the agent in charge leading Derek and Daisy out of the classroom and ask if they're missing anyone else. When Hotstreak tells them yes, but it's okay because he knows where they live. And so that's going to bring us to a close for these first 3 issues. Thank you guys so much for watching along. That's been Static Season 1. We're going to finish up the rest of the season with the next video, and then after that, we'll get into our X-Men coverage. But what other comics are you guys interested in seeing get covered? I've got a lot of ideas, but, I'm interested in what you guys want to see too. So leave a like if you like the video, comment if you got something to say, subscribe, all that good stuff. But I'm T. This is the second printing, and just because you're different doesn't mean you're alone. I'll see y'all in the next one.